First of all, it's great to see everybody here today. We thank our great folks that are going to give testimony, and we look forward to hearing from you. Welcome to today's Cyber, IT, and Innovation Subcommittee hearing on Department of Defense Science and Technology Policies and Programs. While we will not be able to discuss details of the President's fiscal year 2026 budget today, this hearing provides an opportunity for the subcommittee to explore ongoing efforts across DoD to develop and modernize our warfighting capabilities at the necessary speed and skill to fight and win in an era of great power competition. As we know all too well, the United States and our allies are facing unprecedented threats from adversaries around the world. These bad actors seek to undermine global stability and security by eroding the United States' technology edge. The PRC seeks to undermine U.S. leadership in several critical technology areas, including quantum, AI, biotechnology, and cyber. Luckily, the United States is home to the best and brightest companies, engineers, researchers, and warfighters. We are entering a pivotal moment in our nation's history where we can harness this innovation ecosystem and move quickly to deliver cutting-edge capabilities our warfighters need and restore the arsenal of democracy. But despite this potential and promise, we don't have the time or money to waste. We need to move out now to develop, test, field, at scale the technologies that will be required for the United States to win on the battlefields. An example of this is the NC3 enterprise modernization. Then Secretary Mattis started this effort 7 years ago, and we're still churning on it today with very limited progress to date. While I don't expect the NC3 enterprise to be modernized overnight, we need a more focused, integrated, sustained effort across the department. We got to get things done here. First, we must identify the most pressing operational challenges the department must solve. Second, we need to leverage the innovation of commercial sector and our DoD research enterprise to identify technologies that can fill those gaps. And finally, we must test these capabilities in operationally realistic environments quickly and throughout the capability development design periods. In this process, we need to take every day and make every dollar count. We are joined today by 3 DoD organizations who are striving to do just that. Our witnesses include Mr. James Maisel, performing the duties of Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. We appreciate you being here, sir. Mr. Doug Beck, Director of the Defense Innovation Unit, who I've gotten to meet several times now and appreciate the great work you're doing. And Mr. George Rumford, Director of Test Research Management Center. Thank you, sir, for being here. With that, I'm going to yield to our ranking member, Mr. Rokana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say again how much I appreciate your bipartisan leadership of this committee. And I don't know if it's going to cause you grief, but I got Democrats in my district praising you for your being so thoughtful on issues of tariffs and on issue of the leadership of the Defense Department. And I just want to say, at a time where politics is so partisan, you really have stepped up to show leadership, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the testimony here today. I have known Doug Beck for many years, and I appreciate his service. He left Apple when it was less than $1 trillion. Apple's $2 to $3 trillion, so certainly not financially lucrative, but he's answering the call to service, and we're proud of him from Silicon Valley. And I appreciate all of your efforts. Look, I think there's a bipartisan consensus in the country that we need a better, faster adoption and integration of emerging technology to be able to lead in the 21st century. That the country that has technology supremacy is also going to be the country that has military and national leadership. And I know everyone is sort of making an effort towards it. Congress is trying to give you the tools. You're trying at all levels to see how we integrate that technology, emerging technology, in the best ways. And I think what we want to hear today is what the progress has been, what tools you need, how we can continue the goal of the integration of all of the leading technology into our military. I have no doubt that we're still leading the world in the next generation of models and AI, the next generation of technology, but we want to make sure that that's integrated with our military so that we're not falling behind any other country.
Well, I want to thank Mr. Connor for his comments, and this really should be a bipartisan subcommittee, and it is, and it takes a team to do that wants to, Democrats and Republicans want to keep this bipartisan. Cyber threats, EW, AI, IT enhancements, they're not partisan issues, they're American issues, and we just want to get it right. So we'll start off, we'll yield to Mr. James Maisel for 5 minutes.
Chairman Bacon, Ranking Member Khanna, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, I welcome the opportunity to discuss the Department of Defense's research and innovation posture. Research and engineering, or R&E, has clear direction from the President and Secretary Hegseth. Ensure the U.S. military supremacy in critical technology areas over our adversaries and potential opponents. As a congressionally established Chief Technology Officer for the Department, we are determined to accomplish this mission. The CTO has the responsibility for setting modernization priorities and performing the critical oversight function necessary to align nearly $150 billion in annual research, development, test, and evaluation funding. In the interest of time, let me highlight how we are supporting 5 of the 14 critical technology areas. First, microelectronics. We're focused on securing our supply chains and ensuring access for military systems to cutting-edge chips through programs like Trusted and Assured Microelectronics and the Microelectronics Commons Program. These initiatives are vital for reducing our reliance on foreign chip fabrication. Second, artificial intelligence. AI is a transformative general-purpose technology, and we're prioritizing its effective integration across the department. I'd like to highlight the Joint Fires Network, an AI-enabled capability linking diverse sensors and shooters, which exemplifies AI's potential to give us advantages in the future fight. Third, hypersonics. We recognize that adversaries have accelerated their development of hypersonic capabilities, and we are supporting several hypersonics programs and, importantly, industrial base affordability initiatives to ensure robust and affordable testing opportunities and infrastructure. Fourth, directed energy. We're driving development of directed energy weapons to counter threats like drone swarms and other complex missile and aerial attacks. Programs like the High Energy Laser Scaling Initiative, which we've sponsored in R&E, are transitioning high-powered lasers to the services, while also stimulating the industrial base for these critical components. Fifth and finally, quantum information science tech. We are prioritizing quantum applications like sensors and atomic clocks for near-term operational advantage. We're also leveraging U.S. commercial quantum computing to push the boundaries of modeling and SIM for classified applications. Beyond these specific technologies, we're committed to fostering a strong foundation for long-term innovation and manufacturing. The Department's Manufacturing Technology Program, or ManTech, is the only DoD program statutorily mandated and focused on advancing American manufacturing technology for the Department. We're also strengthening the innovation ecosystem through partnerships with the private sector, notably the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs, and we fully support extending the authorization for SBIR and SITR. Office of Strategic Capital, familiar to many of the members of this committee, critical tool to attract and scale private capital for defense technology development, and we are excited to share that OSC will be awarding its first loans as early as this summer. In an op-ed published in Breaking Defense, Chairman Bacon called on the department to, quote, move beyond innovation theater and recycle talking points about technology transition, end quote. We agree. The imperative to avoid innovation theater has shaped our approach to tech development and transition at R&E. This is why we run very disciplined prototyping and experimentation campaigns. We're focused specifically on filling gaps for the joint force. We select technologies based on their potential to solve defined joint operational problems and validated joint requirements, and then we use experimentation to build the body of evidence needed for the services and components to complete transition. By body of evidence, I'm referring to the often overlooked modeling and simulation data, operational assessments, and technical documentation that are necessary for a successful transition into operational capability. I would urge the committee to keep this in mind when considering the concept of transition and how we can do better as a department. We look forward to continued collaboration with Congress to ensure our warfighters have the cutting-edge capabilities they need to defend the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Doug Buck, you have 5 minutes.
Chairman Bacon, Ranking Member Khanna, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee today and for all Congress has done to put DIU in a position to help make a difference. The relentless pace of innovation in the commercial tech sector is changing the character of war at an unprecedented rate. We simply cannot meet the strategic imperative facing our nation unless we can integrate and deploy disruptive technologies from commercially derived sources in AI, autonomy, space, biotech, energy, cyber, and emerging areas like quantum and advanced manufacturing with the focus, speed, and scale necessary to deter major conflict or win if forced to fight. For DoD to effectively rebuild our military, reestablish deterrence, and deter aggression, we must dramatically accelerate our leverage of commercially derived technology, and we must do it now. Today, DIU, as the National Mission Force for Innovation and department-wide lead for scaling commercially derived tech, is working with partners across the department to do just that. We are combining our unique capabilities, including our mastery of the commercial solutions opening process and leverage of dual fluency talent at the intersection of tech and warfighting, with the authorities and resources Congress has provided as a principal staff assistant to the Secretary, with an enhanced budget that includes flexible funding to make real progress. But we must do far, far more. Our work since you helped us dramatically upgrade our capability 18 months ago is focused on 5 core lines of effort. First, DIU is embedded deeply with warfighters at the combatant commands and services to understand their needs and help shape how technology can solve their critical priorities. For example, Admiral Paparo's commercial tech lead in Indo-PACOM is a DIU embed. The result is that DIU's portfolio of projects is aligned to the nation's most critical strategic needs. One current example that DIU is leading for Indo-PACOM is Project Thunderforge, where we're working with R&E and others to deliver cutting-edge commercial-grade AI to revolutionize the speed, versatility, and adaptiveness of operational plans. Second, DIU partners with the services to ensure these most critical technologies have a pathway to the scale needed for strategic effect. In just one example, DIU with the Navy launched, aggressively prototyped, and now has facilitated follow-on production for a new unmanned undersea vessel to meet critical U.S. Pacific Fleet needs, all in less than 24 months from idea to initially fielded capability. We're simultaneously working with teammates such as TRMC, CDAO, and NGA to develop and test software for collaborative autonomy, resilient C2, and automatic target recognition to enable a heterogeneous fleet of multiple unmanned capabilities across domains. This team includes services and Indo-PACOM to ensure the operational and human pieces are in place to deliver real capability that helps deter conflict or win it in the Pacific. Third, DIU's helped catalyze DoD's many innovation organizations into a community of impact through the Defense Innovation Community of Entities, or DICE, where we find synergy and eliminate dyssynergy across time, money, and focus. We use this group to help identify systemic barriers such as onerous authority to operate rules for software across the services, which we then can work from our position at the department's leadership table to help get knocked down. One great example is CIO's momentum against the critical ATO blocker I just mentioned, including through the newly announced Software Fast Track program. Fourth, we continue to take our ability to leverage the very best of the commercial tech sector to the next level. For example, DIU's new Commercial Operations Directorate, with a blend of digital and physical presence, talent, and early-stage company support, allows DIU to provide comprehensive services across the spectrum of technology readiness levels. DIU's deep relationship with the tech sector is grounded in our dual fluency teammates, and this committee's support for our hiring authority in the FY25 NDAA has further strengthened our ability to attract leading-edge tech talent going forward. And fifth, we're actively working to realize the enormous potential of tech partnership with our allies and partners. In the last 18 months, DIU's built deep relationships and put real capability in place with our allies and partners through joint challenges with the UK, Australia, India, Japan, Singapore, and others in Indo-PACOM and around the world. We've made strong progress and are reaching a tipping point across the department, Congress, and the tech sector. We must do much, much more. This is not about incremental change. It is about bold leaps. First, we need to reinforce and scale the progress that's been made at DIU. Reinforcing the success will help DIU work with partners across DoD to deliver the warfighter's most strategic needs, will continue providing a beacon of successful disruptive impact, and will help to deliver the consistent demand signal the tech sector's founders and funders need to make the bets we need them to make for national security. Second, we need to scale the Agile budget experiment from FY24 for DIU and expand on its success to the services, the true engines of scale, with a similar expectation for transparency to what DIU shares with Congress today. We need to shift the dynamic, at least in the fast-moving area of critical technology, from programs of record to portfolios of record, because it's impossible to know 2 or 3 years in advance the exact piece of hardware or software you want to buy when it doesn't even exist yet. Third, we need to help ensure that defense tech is prepared to meet the resulting demand. This is why DIU's launched the Blue Manufacturing Initiative, which focuses on pairing the very best hardware and software manufacturers in defense tech with the very best advanced manufacturing providers who are located right here in the United States to help both strategically critical industries to scale. Fourth, we need to continue making it dramatically easier for the best commercial talent to serve, helping the department access, grow, train, and retain a talent pool that can harness the best of the commercial tech sector. Finally, we as a department will also need Congress's help in changing our collective culture surrounding risk. Together, we must be willing to take the right kinds of risk, process risk, financial risk, and reputational risk, all of the kinds the tech sector takes every day, to avoid taking unacceptable risk to mission, to force, and strategic risk for our nation due to our inability to meet the threat because we move too slow. In conclusion, we look forward to continue working with our teammates across the department, within our allies and partners, in Congress, and across the rapidly evolving tech sector to deliver and scale the impact our warfighters need at the speed the threat demands. Thank you for your leadership, for your support of our efforts, and for your commitment to driving defense innovation forward at this critical moment for our nation.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. I appreciate your comments. Mr. George Rumford, you are now recognized.
Chairman Bacon, Ranking Member Khanna, and the distinguished members of the subcommittee, I thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm honored to be here to discuss the nation's test infrastructure as the director of the Test Resource Management Center. If we want to deter or prevail in future conflicts, we must rapidly experiment, test, and field new capabilities. Let's be honest, business as usual in the DoD will not get us there. We must engage industry in new ways. We have changed how we acquire software. We have expanded how we solicit ideas from industry with the commercial solution openings spearheaded by DIU. And we have doubled down on using other transactional authorities granted to us by Congress. We must harness competition to drive down costs and to maximize value to the taxpayer. And we must innovate how we test. We have to accelerate the design, test, fix process and deliver new capabilities to the warfighter faster. I'd like to highlight some areas we are significantly innovating how we test. First, in hypersonics. Accelerating innovation means testing more. The faster we can test, the faster we can iterate on the designs and deliver capabilities to the warfighter. 4 innovations are helping us accelerate testing hypersonics: MACH-TB, Sky Range, Hypercore, and Overland Corridors. MACH-TB is accelerating the pace of hypersonic experimentation and testing by providing an affordable, rapid flight test capability for DoD programs, industry, academia, and others. MACH-TB leverages commercial space launch services to test hypersonic systems, hypersonic subsystems, components, and materials, all prior to a full system weapons test. This approach allows developers to test components and materials under hypersonic conditions at a relatively low cost, and in some cases, recover the components for post-test detailed analysis. MACH-TB gives us the ability to rapidly redesign and retest to quickly prove out new technologies for our warfighters. In order to affordably collect data from MACH-TB tests and other hypersonic flights, we are repurposing Global Hawks and Reapers to create a flying test range so we can test hypersonics anywhere we need to. We call this capability Sky Range. Hypercore is short for hypersonic correlation. This will enable us to correlate data from hypersonic flight tests with data from our hypersonic wind tunnel tests. This will significantly improve our ability to refine our hypersonic models and simulations so that we can incorporate new technologies into weapon systems even faster. Overland Corridors give us another opportunity to accelerate innovation. In order to test the in-game performance in realistic conditions, we need the ability to fly hypersonics at a large land test range. We look forward to briefing Congress soon on the next steps forward in such capability. Second, autonomy. Many of the exciting capabilities for autonomous vehicles, like swarming drones, are coming from venture capital-backed non-traditional companies. We have to have a strategy to enable access to them at our DoD test ranges. TRC has partnered with DIU, the Navy's Project Overmatch, and INDOPACOM to innovate on how we test autonomous systems. We are developing mobile test capabilities that enable very dynamic testing. We want to stress the agility of these systems, frequent testing while also changing the scenario, changing the threats, and changing the geography to understand how quickly these autonomous systems can adapt to new environments. And third, I'll highlight big data analytics. Future test capabilities, we need to improve our turnaround of test data. Currently, test data collection and validation techniques are very labor intensive, often taking weeks to validate and synchronize gigabits of data from many different sources. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are giving us new opportunities to compress that time from weeks to hours, getting test results in the hand of the developers even faster. We have created a capability called CITI. It's a best-of-breed compilation of commercially available software tools specific for data crunching, enhanced by AI and ML, focused on accelerating data analytics. So thank you again for this opportunity to testify. We share the goals to going fast and delivering new capabilities to our warfighters. I welcome your questions, and I look forward to engaging with you on these topics.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your testimony and your leadership. And my first question is to Mr. Maisel. I have concerns that we spend a lot of time innovating for innovation's sake and not delivering. Can you share more about the research and engineering, prototyping, and experimenting efforts and how you use them to position technologies and capabilities to be ready for actual acquisition?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I think one of the reasons that we have a very successful transition rate exceeding 70–80% for some of our programs is because we focus on the little things that are often forgotten when you're trying to transition technology into the hands of the warfighter, such as a military utility assessment from a combatant command, such as getting the ATOs right. I know that that ATOs are way too challenging to do. So what we do in a professional experimentation campaign is make sure that we are doing those little things that incentivize the service to actually take on the program, to POM for it, and to sustain it over time.
Thank you. Mr. Beck, there are several barriers that keep DoD from acquiring or adopting innovative commercial technologies, and especially at the speed that we need them. I think some of it's cultural. But what is DIU doing to help remove or lessen these barriers?
This is fundamentally what we're spending all of our time doing one way or another. I'll maybe touch on it one way, which is that, so I mentioned that defense innovation community of entities that we've got, which is harnesses kind of the inputs of innovation organizations from across the department. All of us are working with commercial tech organizations all the time in order to identify where those worst systemic barriers are. So one of the things that we're doing is identifying what are those critical barriers: ATOs, access to commercial SCIF space, access to digital and physical range space, identifying those areas, and then some of them directly knocking them down, and others raising them to the department level so that we can go and knock them down together. So those things are some of the systemic barriers that we look at all the time. The biggest thing that we're doing, frankly, though, is to help put points on the board, because the biggest thing that we need to do for that non-traditional capability is put real use cases in place and reference cases where we have scaled the capability. So the biggest thing that we're doing is just making real successes. So concrete example, if you thinking about, for example, counter UAS. So just a few years ago, DIU helped a company that I won't do company names here, but everybody's heard of. With the very first time they had a company level UAS or a counter UAS capability in place. That capability was a DIU CSO. It was picked up by SOCOM, ended up with $1 billion IDIQ. We then are using our funding to help the Marine Corps to bridge to, they just did a $648 million scaling contract for that same capability. So that's an example of helping somebody to scale. The more of those that we can put in place, the more we're going to be able to help all those companies to break down the barriers and get through.
I think success too also will change culture because people want to be successful.
That's right.
You got to plow the field the first time. Mr. Rumford, TRMC carries out the critical function of providing DoD components with the right testing evaluation infrastructure. What is TRMC's plan for leveraging best-of-breed data innovations and investing in modernized software approaches for T&E?
Chairman, thank you for the question. You're exactly right. Our responsibility is this test infrastructure. And when we look at modernizing and making the most of that capability, it really comes down to how are we handling data. We're really in the data business. As much as we conduct tests and we have a test enterprise, the whole purpose of testing is to gather data, to gain knowledge, to understand how to either make good decisions, to understand system limitations, system capabilities. So one of the great things about where the commercial industry has already gone is they've really made significant investments on how to improve knowledge gain through new IT technologies and new software modernization techniques. So the whole agile software development process is very, very important. It does cause challenges to our traditional models where we've been, or our traditional approaches where we've been very stovepiped. And we've had to come up with new ways of giving information flow to go across the continuum of acquisition.
My time's expired, but we'll come back hopefully if we have some time afterwards. With that, I'll yield to my friend and colleague, the ranking member, Mr. Khanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Beck, I wanted to know, in your work, what role do the alliances we have play, and with all of the tariff policy, have we seen it more difficult to work with our allies, or have you still been able to work with our allies?
Yeah, actually, I'm really glad you asked that question. So I mentioned during my opening remarks that one of our 5 lines of effort is the leverage of the incredible capability resident in our allies and partners. You know, the tech sector that I come from and where you spend a lot of time, that technology is something that is created across all of those allied and partners nations in various ways. And so we have a very explicit strategy of working with the innovation entities of our closest allies and partners, helping those who don't have one to stand one up. So, for example, we help the Japanese to stand up an organization sort of called DISTI that's a little bit like what DIU does, and then partnering deeply with them in order to put real points on the board together. And what we do is we look for places where there is a shared strategic or operational need, where there's great technology in both countries, and then we put a concrete program in place with those allies and partners to select companies from both countries who can then have opportunities to scale in both countries. So, for example, with the Indians, we've done 3 challenges so far. One in undersea communications, one in maritime domain awareness, and one in space domain awareness. And each of those help to put real points on the board. They help to create interoperability between our forces, and they also help to contribute to the broader relationship with our allies, which is such a central part of our capability.
And, you know, one more question for you. That we've given DIU a lot of tools, Congress has. What have you been able to do with things like flexibility spending? What are the concrete results of the tools we've given? What other tools do you need?
Yeah, so so DIU's budget is, I always joke, it's probably the most talked about, 0.1% or so of the budget out there. But the amount of that budget, which we deeply appreciate, I think what's even more important than the amount is actually the flexibility that's been built in. So we now have the ability to go all the way from inception 0 and concept through to the initial fielding to an operational unit with our funding, and that provides us with the ability to partner completely differently with the services, because now we can help the services to bridge. So let me give you a concrete example of how that works. So recently with the Army, for example, Army Futures Command, General Jim Rainey sees what's happening in Ukraine and in Gaza. Based on that, writes a directive requirement for company-level unmanned systems. We work with them in much the way that we always would have to help develop that first prototype, select a few prototypes, and have them ready to go. That might be a few $1 million, and in the way we always would have. But then in that first year, the year of execution, we can be in a place to step in as DIU and purchase the first few of those to get them to the transformation and contact brigades that the Army has, so they can start using them operationally, learning from them, and starting to build. While the Army, in that second year, begins to move their more flexible forms of funding, we can continue helping. And then without getting ahead of the President's budget, that provides the opportunity, if we've planned it right, for them to have palmed for it from the beginning, so that you together are able to cross that valley of death and just continue to scale. That puts the points in that we need from strategic capability, and it also provides that company with the ability to scale without ever getting stuck in the valley.
Thank you for your leadership. Mr. Mazzol, I know you worked with Senator Wicker and have a lot of expertise on the Armed Services Committee. How is DOGE affecting all this? I mean, have you sought waivers? Have you noticed any hiring freezes or cuts that you've had to make?
From the R&E perspective, DOGE has served as it is put in the executive order, which has established DOGE as an advisor to the agency head. So we, receive advice and recommendations from DOGE, but the ultimate decisions are the civilian leadership's to make.
So any waivers or things you've needed to do, or no?
I haven't had to enact or exercise any waiver authority.
And I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Finstead, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Bacon. Thank you, Ranking Member Khanna, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Throughout your testimony, both with us today and the written submitted testimony, we have heard much about the importance of the innovation and rapid development that is needed to continue our current defense posture, and the importance of a strong industrial base has been made abundantly clear by all of you. So I want to turn my questions to Mr. Beck. I probably have more than 5 minutes will allow, but I would love to hear your thoughts at some point in regards to your experience both at Apple and the way a thought and idea becomes a reality in that sector, in that setting, versus what you're currently experiencing, and what are the good and bads that we can take from that. But that will be for a different time. But you did spur a couple thoughts from me. And so over the last 10 years, we've seen nearly 50% reduction in the number of businesses within the defense industrial base. Most businesses that left were small businesses. I often hear from the small businesses and contracting officers in the DoD and other agencies are hesitant to take risk on new contractors, thereby making them more likely to select older, larger, and more well-established contractors. I represent a rural-ish district in Minnesota. Minnesota, we have a lot of builders, innovators. We have welders. We have plastic molding companies. We have AI startups. We have a lot of these small businesses. I appreciate the DoD and its contract officers are trying to be effective stewards of taxpayer dollars, but this does create a challenge in rebuilding the defense industrial base. So, Mr. Beck, how can the DoD and Congress work together to enable the DoD and its contracting officers to take smart, calculated risks on new entrants? And you mentioned the culture of risk. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is something that I would love to take up with that offer to spend a whole lot more time and talk about, because I think there's an enormous amount that we can unpack here about how we really need to change the approach to risk, and I think that's what Chairman Bacon was getting at as well in his question. Maybe a couple of thoughts off the bat of concrete things that we're that we're doing. And so first of all, just, DIU's focus very much is on the very best tech that's coming from the commercially derived sector, but the majority of it ends up actually being from small businesses. So about 80%, almost 90% of the work that DIU does is with non-traditionals. About 2/3 of it is with small businesses, and about 1/3 of those is their first time working with the department. So we spend an enormous amount of time with exactly the kinds of companies that you're talking about. And a huge part of what that's about is creating an opportunity that is more porous to their ability to deliver. And I'll just give one concrete example. The requirements process that we have as a department, when you look at it that from, say, my used to be at Apple perspective, it's crazy. Because you basically start out with potentially a 300-page detailed requirements document that goes and tells the tech sector exactly what thing you think you want them to build. But they're the experts in the technology. So what we do at DIU is turn that on its head through the CSO process that Mr. Rumford referred to, where we start with a needs statement. What's the problem we're trying to solve, right? What is that problem? And then we ask the tech sector to come back with their answers. And they only have a couple weeks to do it, which means they can't go off and invent something from nowhere over 6 months or a year. They've got to have technology that's pretty close, and we don't ask them for a 300-page response. We ask them for a maybe 10-page PowerPoint or 2-page memo that says, here's the tech, here's how it make a difference, and we use that to down select to a smaller number that we'll go a bit deeper with over the next few weeks or months before we make a final selection on several prototype contracts. Just that one action opens the aperture dramatically, because if you're a small company, it's very hard for you to put together a 100 or 200 or 300-page thing, especially if there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 different parts of the department that are all showing up saying, I'm the opportunity that has a potential to scale.
I appreciate that. And again, this is probably a cold beverage of your choice and a couple hours of a conversation, but I'm very intrigued, and this is refreshing to hear your thoughts. And again, the small businesses that I represent, I hear quite often that they have ideas, they're innovators, they're builders, and they just don't know that entryway in. And I think the more clear that we can make that, the better opportunity we have to build our defense industrial base. So I appreciate your time, and Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Houlihan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to give a quick shout out to Representative Khanna as well as Representative Bice and the work of the Commission on Biotechnology, National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, and my questions have to do with that. Mr. Massel, you mentioned your kind of top 5 microelectronics, AI, hypersonics, directed energy, and quantum. Would your top 14 include bio or biotech?
Absolutely, and ma'am, it was just for the interest of time and keeping my opening statement within time.
Excellent, excellent. So would you be able to talk a little bit briefly, of course, on the administration's approach and commitment to biotech and
Absolutely,
biotechnology,
and
emerging to biotechnology?
Thank you. First, I want to say that we are taking the Biotech Commission recommendations very seriously and really appreciate the ranking member and other members taking the time to actually serve on that committee. So our approach is to identify opportunities to use biotech in areas such as new energetics for munitions, in helping to mitigate shortfalls that we are going to see in critical minerals and things of that sort. So we're absolutely committed to pushing forward on
Have you had a chance to read the commission's report yet?
I have.
Excellent.
I spoke at the launch of the
What are your
report.
kind of initial reflections on that?
Yeah. Well, I would say that I think it's right over the target. One of the key recommendations of having a more coordinated whole of government strategy is right over the target. It's actually something that we do in the department. We have a principal director in R&E who is responsible for overseeing all biotech investments across the department, road mapping those investments and assuring alignment that the service investments are aligned with our overall strategy. So if that's what we want to do from a USG standpoint, I think it's right over the target.
Excellent. And one of the reports, the Commission's recommendations mentioned that it's very difficult for companies to sell biotech products to the DoD because they don't fall into sort of traditional mil specs, which is something that you mentioned a little bit when you were talking, I think, about Mantech as being an emphasis of yours. In the recommendation of the report, there were recommendations that the Commission have the Undersecretary of R&D work with the Secretary of Defense to have guidance on how entities could prove the merit of biotechnologies in meeting mil-spec. Would you be able to commit to looking at that particular recommendation and review that recommendation and hopefully move forward on that?
Absolutely, and look forward to working with you and getting back to you on that.
Excellent, excellent. The next question that I have for you all is cuts to national security related agencies that are not the DoD, but are NASA and the CDC as an example. The administration has proposed in its budget to cut $1.6 billion from NASA, which would impact satellite monitoring. In addition, the CDC faces about a 39% cut as well. I mean, both of these things obviously have impact in national security and in defense and in DoD. Mr. Maslow, would you be able to talk about how this might affect the DoD's work? Because you do work collaboratively with NASA, particularly on sharing tools and test ranges and those sorts of things. Do you feel as though that might have an impact on you?
Well, I'm prepared to speak about the DoD budget. I'm not intimately familiar with the details of other agencies. So you have the skinny budget, and we'll be rolling out more details about the DoD budget over the month.
So what I would ask of you all is that you talked about whole of government and the integration of government. It's really hard to silo off just DoD when we're talking about national security. It absolutely has to do with CDC. It has to do with NASA. It has to do with USAID. It has to do with all the things. And so it's really hard for a member such as me to sit here and listen to people talking about the importance of whole of government while also talking about the narrowness of a skinny budget. I was also wondering if we might be able to talk a little bit about, with the 31 seconds I have, about disease and the fact that if we have the CDC cut significantly and disease detection significantly cut, it's possible that we will end up with our troops being in harm's way with diseases. One of the things that I am also worried about with the 13 seconds that are remaining is that we are apparently, according to many articles, losing talent to Europe as we are cutting back on our science and research and tech talent. They are being recruited, and the good case scenario, best case scenario would be to Europe. The worst case scenario is to China, and I would ask you guys to consider that as well. And with that, I've lost my time. I appreciate your time, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Aguirre, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to each of our witnesses for being here. It's good to see you again, Mr. Beck. I think we're a common theme here. So, Mr. Rumsford, in March, Secretary Hegseth released a memo directing the use of commercial solution openings, CSO, and other transactions for modern software acquisition. How does Test Management Resource Center plan to carry out that guidance?
Thank you for that question. We are very focused on implementing that memo and being able to support the department in software pathway acquisition, that software acquisition pathway. And so along those lines, it's being able to understand from a test standpoint, as you acquire software, where do you really test and understand? Because one aspect of software development is that with the quote-unquote DevSecOps process, where you integrate development and operation of software, it's what commercial space does all the time. We're boldly going where the commercial community has already gone with our development of software. You need to be able to understand the test points that you've established, how you gain knowledge, and how you can factor that back into the developers. So one of those ways is we're establishing some common standards through the community so that we can better integrate our data across the community.
I think you might have answered the second part, but just to be careful or safe, how can TRMC partner with the Defense Innovation Unit to leverage existing authorities and mechanisms to start incorporating innovative approaches?
So the Test Resource Management Center, actually, we've gone through every instantiation of DIU, from DIU-X to DIU 2.0 to the current leadership under Mr. Beck. And that partnership has continued to grow and strengthen. It goes hand in hand of when you're developing and trying to create innovative solutions, is understanding how well they work is essential to that discussion. And so that's why we've worked those partnerships and continue to foster them.
Well, continuing on that topic, I believe if we continue to see success with these novel acquisition pathways, we're going to make a lot of progress towards bringing bridging the valley of death. But I also want to make sure that we're thinking 2 steps ahead so we can anticipate the next set of challenges. So, Mr. Beck, assuming these pathways work as intended, what do you see as the biggest remaining challenges to solve with respect to startups and small businesses entering the defense ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I really think the, excuse me, the biggest challenge is, at the end of the day, comes down to the ability to scale and move flexibly to do so. I mentioned in my commentary at the start that it's sort of ridiculous for us to be palming for a specific piece of technology today that doesn't exist yet, as opposed to, for example, a portfolio of capability within which the services or whoever would have the ability to move in order to fund something without having to come back and turn that around.
Which is why I think it's a good idea. You said you give them a limited amount of time, so they have to work with off-the-shelf technology.
That's right.
So, Mr. Mazzola, I hope I'm saying that right. I think one of the challenges when it comes to scaling new innovation is finding and developing technology that not only works for each of the services, but also the combatant commands and vice versa. With all the innovation organizations spread across the department, how do you ensure they're synchronized so that we can maximize the value of each taxpayer dollar?
Congressman, it's a huge challenge. I think I had my staff look into it, and we have close to 300 organizations in the department that consider themselves innovation organizations. So you're talking about the defense labs, 62 defense labs, our FFRDCs, our DIUs, the SoftWorks, and all the rest of it. So to be honest with you, I don't think that we have, when you have 300 organizations about that are in the innovation game, I think that we need to take a much harder look to make sure that we're deconflicted. Can I just say one thing about software acquisition pathway, because I think it builds upon a point that Mr. Finstad made about contracting. One of the important things that we're doing here with software acquisition pathway is that we are saying to contracting officers, thou shalt use CSO or OTA, and that's going to be the rule, not the exception. So part of changing behavior might just be actually forcing behavior.
With that, I've run out of time, so I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whiteside, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I'm super excited about this conversation. I wish we could talk for many hours. But anyway, first question is to Mr. Rumford. As you no doubt know, the 412th Test Wing, located at Edwards Air Force Base in my region, although not my district, as is the Mojave Air and Spaceport. Together, they're the cutting edge for aircraft testing and simulation, not just for the Air Force, but for commercial operators in some cases as well. Could you briefly discuss the 412th's importance to developing the warfighter capabilities of the future?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. The 412th, simply put, is essential to the United States national security. Our nation has air superiority capabilities because of the 412th, period. Everything that we have developed from an Air Force capability standpoint, all the tactical air, bomber, all those capabilities go through the 412. So they are a crown jewel of our nation and is a national asset that's very important that we maintain for our nation. I mentioned earlier about data. They are actually one of the leaders that we have among innovative ways of doing data analytics and to being able to turn around test data from the weeks to hours that I mentioned earlier. They kind of spearheaded a number of those efforts. Thank
That's
you.
great. That's great. Thank you so much. I have a limited amount of time, so I appreciate that, and I share your enthusiasm for the 412th, so thank you for that. In my region of Southern California, we've just undergone the worst wildfire disaster in American history in terms of structures lost. Over the past decade, we've suffered the deaths of hundreds of people and hundreds of billions of dollars in economic losses. And wildfire is sort of unique in the sense that it's the only large-scale natural disaster that can be prevented through mitigation and early action. In Southern California, we're deeply grateful for the role that the military has played in helping fight those fires, from MAFs, Fire Guard, other programs, but I've long been convinced that the Department of Defense could be doing more in this crucial fight. As we know, natural disasters like wildfires don't just threaten civilians, they impact our military readiness, the safety of key installations like Vandenberg Space Force Base, and the safety of our service members and their families. DoD, when given the room to run, is the world's leader in innovation and could potentially do more. And the DoD has experience in developing capabilities that the civilian disaster response community doesn't. As an example, linking a rapid sensor layer in the infrared spectrum to autonomous capabilities that could rapidly put suppression mass on target. This is a question for all of you, and maybe we can follow up on afterwards. But what ideas do you have about capabilities that could help us protect our valued infrastructure and people from the wildfire threat, and what thoughts do you have about organizations within the DoD that could help develop the tech related to this crucial national challenge?
Very interesting challenge, sir. I think DARPA is an organization that's under me, an R&E, and it's something that I'd want to take back to those guys and look forward to further conversation about.
That'd be great. Look forward to that.
Sorry, maybe just throw a couple of quick ideas out there. So DIU has worked closely with the National Guard Bureau on some AI-enabled tools to help with their rapid acceleration, or their acceleration of the ability to kind of pull in all the data that they're getting and then respond more quickly. And it's natural. I think you've had the opportunity to spend some time with Major General Bucky Butow, who's our military deputy at DIU. He also happens to simultaneously be the commander of the California Air Guard. So he spends a lot of time in this space and has personally championed some of these issues. I do think that one area is taking those AI tools to the next level to accelerate our ability to respond more quickly. I also think there probably are other areas where there are hardware solutions that we're learning a lot about in the military, including unmanned system solutions that might be a useful part of the fight.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rumford, would you like to add anything?
Just from the standpoint of, the military often breaks things down as an OODA loop of how quickly you can sense things and respond to things, and I actually think that applies exactly to this problem. And the technology advances that we're using with AI and ML to close that loop as fast as possible, I think has a lot of applications to support our nation.
I agree, and I look forward to working with you all on these ideas. Thanks so much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. McCormick, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the guests for coming here to witness to us today. I appreciate you very much. Mr. Mazzol, what is the department's vision for modernizing its test and evaluation architecture?
Sir, I would actually prefer to defer that question to Mr. Rumford as the head of TRS.
I don't want to talk. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the question, and so we have a lot of, the major approach to strategizing or improving the test infrastructure is really understanding the national defense strategy and where the department is focusing on defending our nation. So we look at those major areas that we want to go after as a department, and then we turn around and look at the capabilities that we have existing within our infrastructure, and then where we find gaps, that is where we find partnerships with other federal agencies, and more importantly, the industry and academia, on how do we get after understanding how we can understand if something works. Because that's what testing is,
Sure.
Understanding if something works.
And you mentioned testing. That's a good point. So right now we're in essentially a proxy war. We're having real live fire exercises, seeing what's working and what's not working. We're seeing jamming on navigation systems. We've seen triangular counterfire, which we had before, but now it's been honed to the point where 155, which we're all worried about running out of ammunition, now is almost ineffective because we're worried about the counterfires, right? So everything's changing rapidly. How do we test and evaluate something that hasn't even been used on the battlefield yet? How are we working and integrating with vendors and accelerating this process of getting to the next generation of accelerating the kill chain?
So what you've just highlighted in your question is the thing that we know is going to be there is change. I mean, the thing that's constant will be change. So we know that there's going to be differences. So one of the things that we introduce into our test infrastructure is how agile are our systems into responding to a very, very changing dynamic environment, because we know that there's going to be rapid evolution. And recognizing existing geopolitical conflicts that are occurring in the world, that gets back to my comment of we're interested in data, and data comes from many, many sources. And sometimes it comes from operational activities that we can learn a lot of value from and factor that back into our design and test.
So you think the data and software-centric technologies are really realizing that vision right now? You think we're able to accelerate that process of what we're purchasing, what we're investing in year by year rather than decade by decade, which has been our tradition, right? The legacy systems that take a decade of R&D, a decade of incorporation, a decade of sustainment. And by the way, now I get to retire as a CEO of that 30-year period.
So there's always, I mean, there are pockets of success that we can point to that we have made great strides with. Some of the things that we're working with across the R&E enterprise, we're in DIU, we're very rapidly trying to deliver capability to the warfighter, so we can show examples of where good successes occurred, where we've learned, iterated, and delivered in a very rapid fashion. But as you just highlighted, that is not the current culture across the department. And we have to change that culture because, quite frankly, if we don't iterate, we won't be successful.
Thank you. Mr. Beck, you talked about DIU extensively in your opening remarks. Appreciate that. What's the challenges in transitioning programs from the DIU over to the military services right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the biggest difference between what DIU is doing in DIU 2.0 and what DIU is now doing in DIU 3.0 is all about that pathway to scale. So DIU always had we called a transition partner as part of the criteria for deciding to go do something. We've changed that to there must be a pathway to scale, and that fundamentally is about the partnership of the services. So I mentioned some of the concrete tools that we have in place, for example, the flexible funding, but perhaps even more important is the fact that now that I have the ability to be sitting at the table to then go sit down with the leadership of each of the services, which literally we're doing this right now, to sit down with our 2x2 matrix of here are the most strategic projects, here's where we're uniquely positioned to help, this is our list of what we're doing for the Army, General George. Let's sit down and agree, is this the right set of stuff? And if so, does that mean that you're going to put the pieces in place to be able to scale it?
So I got about 15 seconds, and that's what I was going to ask you. In this contracting management, is this cutting down on duplicative contracting systems so that we're not reproducing the same thing in parallel lanes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that back to Mr. Maisel's point from before, the more that we can coordinate and collaborate, the more that's going to be true.
Appreciate you. Thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Moulton, you're now recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you for your leadership. Mr. Beck, DIU's ability to move fast and partner effectively with commercial innovators seems to stem not just from authorities or tools, but from culture, how your teams work, how they take risk. So what is it about DIU's internal culture, whether it's talent recruitment, decision-making, what is it that you believe is most essential to replicate across the broader acquisition system, and what are some concrete steps that Congress could take or senior DoD leadership could take to help instill that kind of innovative culture and fast culture in the rest of the department?
Yeah, I love that question.
That makes me happy.
So I'd say the most fundamental point is that point that I made at the end of my remarks. Everybody who is at DIU understands that we are on the clock, that it is our job to put capability in the hands of the warfighter now so that we can deter major conflict or win if we're forced to fight it, and that if we are risk-averse and slow now, that means that down the road, those airmen, guardians, Marines, soldiers, sailors are not going to have the tools they need, and that's going to cost lives. That's very, very clear. And so we're willing to take risks up front in order to, maybe look stupid because you tried something that didn't work. And that, I think, is a really important point. You know, the company that I used to work for, there was a saying that we had that was 100 no's for every yes. If you think about the way that how many times a company like, we're talking about space, how many times a company like SpaceX had a failed launch before they started to be able to do launches incredibly well and for a much lower cost and and quite reliably. And you think about the way that we would handle that when there's a failure. Right? So I think we need to fundamentally change our approach to risk and to failure. That failure on the way to success is success. Failure on the way to not do anything is still failure. And I think that's going to be something that the department needs to change culture around. I also think it has implications for the relationship between Congress and the department, because it's hard to take risk in the department if you think that the first time you fail, you're going to be sitting in a chair like this one explaining how stupid you are.
So, I mean, I agree with you, and I've sat in hearings like this before and said exactly that we want you to fail. We want you to fail fast. We want you to take these risks. But not everyone agrees. So what are the actual policies that we could put in place to make that happen?
So I think that changing the policy. So, and this is something I'd love to come back with some specific concrete
That's
ideas
great.
on.
If you want to take that for the record.
I'd love to maybe take it for the record, because I don't want to throw out a bunch of ideas. But I think that it at the end of the day, you change behavior by changing direction at the top, and then by changing concrete incentives for people's careers. And until we actually change those concrete incentives for people's careers all the way through the rank and file, you're not going to get the change you want.
DIU is also very good at working with non-traditional vendors. Any recommendations for how we can open pathways to new entrants, smaller startups that right now are very frustrated by the intense DoD bureaucracy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you've heard my colleagues here, we've all talked about kind of leveraging the CSO process that turns that kind of requirements piece on its head right at the front end. I think that's a good start. I think the biggest thing, and I've said this a couple times, and I'll just keep reinforcing it, the biggest thing that we can do is create reference cases where there are successes, where companies not just sell their first couple of things to the department, but they actually grow in scale, because that helps them, but it also helps all the other ones, and it helps all the people who are thinking and investing in all the other ones. So we've got to do that. And then I think we've got a set of very specific concrete blockers, whether they're cybersecurity standards that people have a hard time figuring out and meeting, whether they're facility clearances, whether they're individual personal clearances. There's a list, and it's not that complicated. And we've just got to keep ticking and down it and making those things either.
Mr. Mazzol or Rumford, would you like to add anything?
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge that I see is the way that the department budgets. We are living with a budgeting system from the McNamara era. And I would encourage the committee to take a very close look at the PPBE Commission report. The department, I don't believe, has provided officially sanctioned views on that. But I'll just say, for me, it's quite compelling. Right now, my organization is executing FY24 appropriations, FY25 appropriations. We sent you the skinny budget, so we're going to be soon defending 26, and we're building 27. So you put all of those things together, it creates a lot of challenges, including what I like to call in my previous life on the SASC, the come back and see me in 2 years problem, which is that you have company X comes in with a widget that can solve a problem for the Army, and the answer is, well, that's great, I'll POM for you now, and then in 2 years, you'll show up in a budget request. So,
Mr. Maisel,
need
I'm sorry,
to-
time's expired. I need
sorry about
to
that.
yield to and recognize Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rumford, we're seeing a significant surge in private industry and academic institutions driving R&D, particularly with hypersonics. One example, of course, would be University of Notre Dame's Mach 10 Quiet Wind Tunnel. It provides critical ground-based testing capabilities for hypersonic systems. So I have kind of a two-part question. One, can you elaborate on how the DoD is integrating these cutting-edge infrastructures to strengthen our testing and evaluations process? And then more specifically, do you agree that leveraging these types of infrastructures can help us acquire and operationalize critical technology faster?
Thank you for that question. Absolutely. I'll answer the second part first. Absolutely. It is critical for us, and I know the comment earlier about a whole nation approach. We absolutely need to be able to integrate in what academia has made advancements in and industry has made advancements in, because quite frankly, that is the American way. That's actually how we innovate fast. That is our secret sauce. We're not going to outperform our adversaries with using processes that they use. We should be using the processes that we thrive in. And that's competition with a lot of people in our nation trying to brainstorm and tackle problems. And so what we're looking at at the Test Resource Management Center is back to that data question. How can I integrate data from different sources? If I only have one wind tunnel, it's pretty easy to inventory. It's pretty easy to understand that data. But if I want to take advantage of what's in academia, other tunnels that are in industry, I need to have a strategy to get there. And that's why the HyperCore, the hypersonic correlation program that I mentioned earlier, is essential to this whole nation approach. Because we do want to leverage the great strides that academia and industry is making.
Yeah, and I like the fact that, I mean, in a full committee hearing we had a year or two ago, Chairman Rogers acknowledged that we are behind in hypersonics technologies. We're behind China, we're behind Russia, and we need to acknowledge that and not only catch up with them, but outpace them. And we have to be innovative, or that's not going to happen. And I like what's happening with the University of Notre Dame and Alabama. Yep. And A&M working together, creating that kind of synergy. So thank you for your response. Mr. Beck, can you share which specific areas within the DoD's critical technology roadmap are currently being prioritized?
So you mean which specific technology areas?
Yeah.
Well, so we work across at DIU, right? We work across AI, cyber, autonomy, space, biotech, and emerging technologies like quantum and hypersonics, and now advanced manufacturing. And I would say, rather than one specific area among those things, the way that we think about it is what are the most critical operational gaps that we've got to solve for, and how does that drive thing? And that yields, for example, as we think about INDOPACOM, a very high focus, for example, on autonomy, not just the hardware across different domains, but the collaborative autonomy, the resilient C2, and the automatic target recognition that allows you to have a heterogeneous swarm of autonomous vehicles to go and take action. That's one major area. Another major area that it's worth talking about, and maybe talking about more in a classified session sometime, is in space, where there's an enormous amount that we're doing, leveraging commercial space capabilities combined with more exquisite capabilities, various kinds. And there's an enormous amount more to do there. And then maybe a third piece that I'll touch on is the impact that AI, both generative AI and large language models, but also distilled smaller language models that you can then take and put on what we would have called in the tech sector on device, so that they can operate in a GNSS denied atmosphere. That's another one.
Great. And I'm going to ask one real quick. I'm glad you mentioned DIU. How do you plan to expand DIU's efforts to scale innovative solutions more rapidly and strengthen the integration of emerging technologies and operational capabilities across the services?
So excuse me, the biggest thing that we can do is really just put significant points on the board that matter. So right now, we've been given some great tools by the Congress and the funding that we have and the flexibility that's there. We have a fantastic set of partnership with the services, and we've got some very critical problems that we're working on. We need to deliver on those things and then use that momentum to keep just growing and scaling. So one thing that I think is really critical is that we continue to reinforce the salient that's been created in this space and deliver on that. Yeah. We need that for the strategic impact we need, and we need that also for the founders and funders out there to see the success of working with the department at scale.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Time has expired. With that, we recognize Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. I want to start just a quick feedback from last time some of you were before us. In terms of what I think a lot of my colleagues in a bipartisan way are hearing, I want to specifically commend DIU. As I've been out there from Indo-PACOM to talking to maneuver commanders, talking to service secretaries, I consistently hear, like, essentially, if I have a problem and I need a capability, who do I go to? It's DIU, and I think that is a really important takeaway that I hope just continues here, and that we don't, as we go through a professional transition as it's playing out, that we don't lose any momentum on that, and then anything that we can do as a Congress or individually to keep that momentum going that you've built. I just think that's important to share that feedback I'm hearing from trusted commanders out there, and to please pass that back to your folks working really hard across the board, especially Mr. Beck, to your team. I want to hone in a little bit on a specific part of your mission, which doesn't get as much sort of public focus, but I think it's really important, which is something started a few years ago, the on-ramp hubs, the DIU on-ramp hubs, with the idea, as I understand it anyway, of making sure that the fullness of our economy in across the country is being leveraged and utilized to bring to bear that innovation for our national security and for the department. And I was excited to see in the reconciliation bill, one of the things I was excited about in the reconciliation bill was an additional $50 million for the on-ramp hubs, which I think is exciting. Can you talk about, starting with you, Mr. Beck, and then to you, Mr. Maisel, how are you thinking about what are the criteria as you continue to expand those that you would say are most important to set up for success, and how you choose those?
So first of all, I would say thank you very much for the comments and feedback. The team will enormously appreciate that because that's why they get up every day. But I also would say it's a team effort. So all of my colleagues here and across the whole department, we're doing that stuff together. So in terms of the on-ramp hubs, so first comment I make is that, we've got, the on-ramp hubs are one of the ways in which we establish kind of presence across the country, because it is really important to us to do that. We now have, we have companies from all 50 states applying for our work. We've already awarded in 36 of the 50 and growing all the time. As far as those on-ramp hubs themselves, the way we think of it is it's about providing a simple access point to DOD, and that's not just a DIU, but to across the DOD kind of enterprise, particularly the innovation enterprise. So all those DICE members are part of that. And then providing common access point for the DOD to the tech sector in those key nodes. And so where we're really looking for that opportunity is where we've got the strongest pockets of really, of really powerful innovation going on across founders and funders, to have that ecosystem that we want to be able to both harness and facilitate. So that's really how we think about it.
And maybe to cue you up, just in limited time, Mr. Maisel, with of course no bias to my wonderful home state of New York, I would point out that there is currently not an on-ramp hub in New York by many measures, from capital invested, major, now 100+ major defense tech, aerospace, maritime defense companies based not only in New York City but across the state, AFRL, a lot of great things happening. Would you be willing to take a look, Mr. Maisel, at a recommendation around a New York hub as something you would look at under your purview?
Mr. Ryan, I'm pleased to report that DIU is statutorily independent of R&E, so this is Mr. Beck's program. I would say that the program that is under my purview is Small Business Innovation Research. So the department spends $3 billion a year on the SBIR program, and it's up for reauthorization this year. As I said in my opening statement, the department fully supports the reauthorization.
Thank
so
you.
happy to engage with you on any of your small businesses that.
If you want to say great things about New York too, we'll never hold that against you.
Thank you.
Mr. Beck, would you take that back and look at New York as you weigh all the various options?
Of course, and I will also say, New York is already the number 4 location for DIU contracts after California, Texas, and effectively the D.C. area of Virginia, and growing. And that doesn't even include the investor base that's there, which is a really important part of what we do. So we absolutely be happy to follow up on that.
Thank you. Yield back, Mr. Chair.
I must point out Nebraska is before New York alphabetically. Mr. Vindman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in to testify today. So just as a bit of background, it was not so many years ago that I was serving in the department, and in my last several jobs, it was in the RDT&E realm, so at the White House National Security Council, legal advisor for emerging technologies, and then the SJ for CCOM and Army Development Command in Aberdeen. So these are topics that are near and dear to my heart, and with an understanding of both acquisition and contracting. And frankly, we have a great deal of work that needs to be done in those regards. And it sounds like to me, Mr. Maisel, that maybe the congressional budget process may be part of the problem that we have to resolve.
I hesitate to opine on the legislative branch's process.
It's really a yes or no. You don't have to get into the details.
Well, of course, I'll say that continuing resolutions are never helpful, and they create instability. What I was commenting on before to Mr. Moulton is our own internal DoD budget process that I know you're familiar with, which also is in desperate need of reform.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, and given my current job now of 5 months, I have Quantico, Dahlgren, and Walker are in my district. And frankly, I think you all recognize that Dahlgren also has some national level exquisite capabilities that are very important that we maintain and probably grow based on the capabilities. Kind of drilling down a little bit, the rapid emergence of unmanned systems has fundamentally changed the way modern warfare is conducted, and we've seen unmanned aerial systems in every major conflict of recent years, and obviously they're extensively used in the war in Ukraine, and having traveled to Ukraine 14 times since the start of the invasion in 2022, I've got a sense of what that looks like. There are really sort of at least three distinct phases of the war: the maneuver phase in the outset, and then, you know, the trench warfare. Now, I think what's largely a drone war. They've also been used by Iranian-supported militants to kill U.S. service members in Jordan. There's a massive need for investment in UAS and counter-UAS. And Mr. Beck, I applaud the work coming out of the DIU to adapt to the battlefield redefined with this technology, specifically the work you're doing as part of the Blue UAS initiative. Can you speak more to what you've learned from Ukraine, specifically from DIU being embedded with SAGU to capture necessary lessons learned, both offensively and defensively, and how we can apply them to our own needs globally?
Yeah, so I mean, there are the lessons learned that we're taking from what's happening in Ukraine every single day are enormous, powerful, and constant. I was there just this last December, and the pace of change, both in terms of the unmanned system and counter unmanned system capabilities, both hardware and software, as well as the manufacturing capabilities with, and software writing capabilities of developers and 3D printers in basements all over the place to make that stuff, is truly incredible. I think the biggest kind of concrete pieces of learning have to do with, aside from kind of the most obvious around the need for resilience under electronic warfare, the pace at which that changes, and the speed at which you've got to move, is the scale at which you've got to move. And so I would just point out that that in Ukraine there are as many as 4,000 systems expended in a day, and last year the department bought about 4,000 systems, and that's not a great. Now, obviously, they're not comparable, but that's something that we've got to do something about. Part of that is about taking learning from Ukraine to be able to bring the speed of production and the cost of production dramatically down, and that's a huge area that we're focusing with Blue UAS.
And to that point, that's why I have asked for a significant investment in UAS, small, inexpensive UAS. To the point, Mr. Rumford, you made, is this loop, the OODA loop. Now, it's not 12 or 24 months. It's literally days, because they're getting feedback from the battlefield, and and then turning around, making hardware changes, and then executing. So I think I've run out of time, but maybe I saw a north-south, and I'll just leave it at that. So thank you for your time, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Keating, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses. I want to just ask a question more broadly, earlier on in the pipeline in terms of innovation and research. And my concern in that regard is it's the basic research, obviously plays a part in the early stages of innovation, but our nation's universities serve as an important partner with the Department of Defense. It's not only the cutting-edge science conducted on our campuses across the country, but it's also the development of the next generation workforce, the STEM workforce that goes into continued innovation and research. So I'm concerned in my own district, one of the areas of concern we have with defense is surrounds the ocean and undersea warfare and the development there. And there's a lot of concerns there and in other places about budget cuts in that regard and how that can affect our overall innovation and development coming down the road. I always thought that universities are an integral part and the research that surrounds those in terms of what we can do and developing the workforce you need at the same time. So getting to a broader view of what could be and what could be giving us problems down the road, getting to the stage we're talking now, I'm really concerned about those issues. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
Sir, I'd just say that every weapon system that we have is based on basic research. We would be nowhere without it. And our university partners are absolutely critical because that's where the vast majority of the basic research occurs.
Mr. Beck.
Hear, hear. And I would maybe add that a very large number of the small businesses that we're talking about that then wind up wanting to come and join a CSO for DIU also had their origins in a university or in people from the university one way or another. And it's no accident that our innovation centers around the country are related closely to where those great academic centers are. Silicon Valley was built, the Silicon Valley Record was built out of that collaboration between academia, the public and private sector around national security, and it's the core of how we do this.
Yes, Rumford.
From a testing standpoint, universities are absolutely essential. I mentioned earlier some of them have capabilities in laboratories that provide utility to us, but more importantly, we have sponsored programs where we take university students and have them work at our DoD test labs and facilities to give them hands-on experience, because the quicker and faster they understand national security problems, the better they're able to contribute and provide innovative, fresh ideas.
Yeah, and one of my institutions, the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth, there's a grant and a program going there that really not only helps the development of research, but it also provides a workforce. There's an amazing linkage to the people that work there and the needed and the void that's there with our Department of Defense. So the workforce issues, I think, are critical. Do you want to comment on that aspect too?
Yeah, absolutely. The SMART Scholarship Program, which we run out of R&E, was created by Congress several years ago. It's a scholarship for service program, and I don't have the exact figures, but a significant percentage of our new talent coming into our defense labs are coming out of that program. So it's a very important pipeline.
And I would just add into the commercial tech universe as well, the exact same thing is true. So, for example, we run a program called Hacking for Defense that yields incredible talent that gets passionate about solving these problems, and then many of those people either go on to work somewhere in the department or they go on to spawn companies. In fact, without getting into specifics, we literally just had an award to one recently that was a company that came out of a Hacking for Defense challenge.
And along those lines too, PhDs I see running around some of these campuses and things, they're all from the United States. We are a mecca worldwide for people coming here. And I'm concerned with a lot of the issues that are surrounding or could inhibit, let me put it that way, some of the international participation into our universities. I mean, how important is the international component with these PhDs and these other people coming here to the United States and delivering that?
Well, the specific policies that are related to student visas and things like that, sir, I'm just not able to comment on that from the R&E perspective.
Well, I can say it goes without saying. I yield back.
Thank you. I have a couple of follow-up questions, if I may. I want to talk about NC3 to Mr. Maisel and Mr. Beck. But first one, Mr. Maisel, I appreciated talking to you last week, and you mentioned that you have a vision to establish a new NC3 tech accelerator. And just 7 years ago, General Mattis, or I should say Secretary Mattis, directed major changes to improve our management and modernization for NC3, and we passed under the NDAA a requirement to establish a major force program for NC3. So we've had some work being done at Offutt within Stratcom, but also they're standing up a new REACH organization that brings in the military experts and industry partners. So this effort's been ongoing. It's still fledgling. How do you foresee what you're doing? How will that assist this effort? Hopefully it will be synchronized and not separate activities.
Absolutely. So we view NC3 as the fourth leg of the triad. One thing that we've observed is that, as you know, many of the tools that we have for NC3 are of a certain vintage, and so we need to refill the toolbox, and so that's what NC3 Tech Accelerator is all about. And the linkage that we have with Stratcom has to be ironclad, because Stratcom is going to generate the requirements and produce the needs that we are going to try and fulfill through NC Tech Accelerator.
I just hope it's complementary to the REACH, because we've invested millions of dollars to get this stood up as well. So I just appreciate your coordination between the two, and hopefully we can build upon each other on that effort. And Mr. Beck, you've done tremendous, the DIU's done tremendous work in Indo-PACOM. I mean, the things that you're working on are game changers. We're hoping you can do the same thing with Stratcom. Do you see some promising areas where DIU could support Stratcom's mission in the same way? Particularly, we're doing electronic warfare and also the NC3 portion.
Yeah. So first thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd say is obviously Indo-PACOM is an enormous focus for the entire department, including DIU. We work very closely across the combatant commands and have embeds in multiple places. We have had discussion with Stratcom about how we help them get after their most critical problems, and you can imagine what that is. The only thing that I would add to what Mr. Maisel said is that as we're looking at that NC3 architecture, for example, where we've got such a critical strategic need, we want to make sure that we've got the absolute best technology in that. Some of that technology will necessarily be highly bespoke national security channels. Others of it will want to harness the very best of what's out in the commercial sector, and that's our job.
Thank you. Mr. Khanna, do you have any closing comments or questions?
I do not. I'm good.
Okay. Any follow-up? Okay. I want to take just time to say thank you for coming in and sharing the great work that your organizations are doing and your expertise. We look forward to working with you, and with that, we'll close.